is all about you. As you probably haven't noticed in the last couple of days, a couple of us on the faculty sometimes show a little bit of ego. Nobody's noticed that. Not Cathy. Absolutely not Cathy, because Cathy is, whatever she's going to try to tell you, she is actually all about you. If you are a sick relative, Cathy will be there at the hospital as soon as you can get there. If you are a friend who is having a personal crisis, as long as it's not financial, Cathy will be there for you. If you have had the privilege of being in her small group, you know that Cathy is there for you. It's what makes her a great lawyer, a great teacher, and one of my best friends in the world, and I am proud to present Cathy Bennett.
Sorry, folks. Well, so, I'm not really sure at this moment what it was I was supposed to say that would be new for you after the presentation that you just saw. And I think that this will be a nice opportunity for us to sort of go back and look at some of the stuff that, that Cynthia did. She is brilliant. She was that good when she was a participant here. I know because I was rookie faculty. She did her opening statement in the Brown case, which I still remember to this day. And I remember sitting there and thinking, ooh, I don't belong here with people like that. She's just wonderful. So I am going to hopefully incorporate some of what she was doing. I had planned to start this presentation by showing you a little snippet from an opening statement that I did so that I could make this powerful pitch about the importance of primacy and about the importance of storytelling and choosing where you begin the story. And because of what Cynthia just did, I think I'll cut that a little bit short. But I will give you just a little bit of it, okay? It was almost 2:15 in the morning by the time the man finally got there. He had been speeding at a rate of speed up to 80 and 90 miles an hour as he traveled down the Mass Pike from Revere out to the western part of the state in Springfield. He finally came to a small house at the end of a dark, tree-lined street. And he stopped his car quickly, and he threw open the door, and he ran up the front wooden steps, up onto the porch of that house. The lights were out inside. But he could see the flicker of the TV still going. And he knocked on the door. And a woman struggled to wake up, got out of the easy chair she'd fallen asleep in watching TV, came to the door. And she said, "Who is it?" And he said, it's me, open the door." And as she opened the door, she saw that man, shrouded in shadows, unable to see his features clearly. But she knew that it was her son, that it was Juan, and that he was in trouble. She pulls him into the doorway and into the house, and once he's in the light, she's able to see him now for the first time. And this is what she sees. She sees his eye that's cut and bloody. She sees the slit along the side of his face. She sees the place where his lip was busted open and the eye that is turning purple and red and swelling. She sees the cut on his thumb that looks small, that looks insignificant in some ways, and yet won't stop bleeding because it is so deep it goes to the bone. It will not close. It will not stop bleeding. And she sees the cuts and bruises on his elbows. She sees her son Juan. He's in trouble. I'm going to stop right there, okay? What the case is about, it's a murder case, and the legal theory of the case is self-defense. The reason I chose to start there rather than the fight in the case was because one of the worst facts for us in the case is that his pregnant girlfriend is with him in the car at the time that he has a fight with her ex-boyfriend and the father of the little boy who's in the back seat of the car. Then flees, drops her off, changes his clothes, and then drives all the way out to Springfield to his mother's house. And because that was a fact beyond change for us, I chose to make it a good fact. And then I got into a little bit of the things that he told her, the story of what it was that had happened earlier that evening. And I chose to start that way. I suppose I could have started by doing something like, hello, my name is Kathleen Bennett, and I have the privilege of representing this young man here, Juan. Now, the prosecutors told you that he's charged with murder. And he's told you about what it is that happened that night. And I am going to ask you to listen very, very carefully. But keep in mind that as I now talk with you about our side of the story, what I say is not evidence. When is somebody going to start booing and throw something? I've been going on here with all this bullshit for how long, right? I mean, I could do that. And what does that say? That says, that says basically, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Or I could try something a bit more concise than my first choice. I could, something that is really to the point and clear. There's no misunderstanding about our position in the case. Like doing something like this. Greatest trial advocacy movie ever made. Hello.
Oh,
Well, pay close attention here. Actions speak louder than words. Anybody remember what his words are?
everything that guy says.
Bullshit. Right? Everything that guy just said is bullshit. And then the prosecutor moves to strike, and the judge strikes the entire opening with the exception of thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? So you can start that way, right? But really, that's not all that great either. But at least we're out there and we're in their faces and we're saying something. It's something defensive in reaction. Everything that guy said is bullshit. But at least we're saying something that has some passion to it and that it relates to what? Our client. When we do that good morning, I am shit, that is all about us. That has nothing to do with our client. And we can get up and we can say it in every goddamn case we try, and we can suck. Or we can get down to the heart of what the case is about and tell the story of innocence. Because really, opening statement is all about telling the story of innocence. So, you know, what scares us? Right? What scares us about opening statements? Besides the fact that, I don't know, does anybody else here suffer from trial dysentery? I picked that for a reason, because, you know, it resonated with me. But what scares us about opening statements?
You might not be able to prove what you promised in your opening.
Okay, sure. So you may make promises you can't keep because it may not come out the way you perfectly presented it, and what happens then?
You've let the jury down. You've lied to them about your case.
And who else have you let down?
The client.
Okay.
I was going to say, similar to that, it can turn into a shit show, and if you put out one theory, and you need during the course to change it to another theory, that's another way that you've let down or maybe look incredible now.
Okay. Now, that's a very interesting comment, and I think we need to take just a minute to unpack that. But let me just say that you and I must have been separated at birth, because I really like that word. It's very expressive, shit show. Is that one word? Is it all right. But at any rate, okay, shit show, right? We may be in the middle of trial and our theory of defense may have to change. If you have done the work that Andrea showed you how to do yesterday, and the work that you will be doing through, you know, your theory of the case development didn't stop today or yesterday. It's going to continue to evolve and grow right through the last day of this program when you do your closing argument. But what is probably not going to happen is that the essential nutshell version of your theory of the case is not going to change, because you will have figured stuff out. And you will know what the facts are that are coming in, the facts beyond change that you have to accommodate. And we will talk later because, well, let me ask you now, can you tell me of a time when that's happened to you? Where you're in the middle of a trial and all of a sudden you were going ID and now you're going consent?
I mean, I can't speak specifically to that particular thing happening, but I practice in New York and in Manhattan in particular, and
Yeah, I've
like
heard
many
about
of
you
our
people. It's pretty fucked up
colleagues
there.
have said, we don't get discovery until literally 15 minutes before jury selection starts. So we give oftentimes exactly those blah blah openings because we haven't had opportunity to explore a lot of the things that we should according to what Andrea taught us. So
I have something to say to you guys, and I mean this with all respect.
change it, right?
What?
Trying to change it.
Yeah, it is your job to go back and change that, because that is a travesty. Your client is being deprived of the right to present a defense. He's being deprived of effective assistance of counsel. He's being deprived of his rights to confront the witnesses against him, okay? And that's just bullshit, what you guys are having to face and what your clients are having to face. Your situation is a special situation, and I would venture to say that everywhere else in the room, at least, people are not dealing with that level of lack of information about the case before
I
they
am.
start. And where are you from?
Virginia.
And so do you have a police report?
No, we don't get a police report. They're supposed to give us our client statements, but they never do. They come out on the stand. But we have a jury trial on appeal, so the first court is a court not of record, and you have a bench trial in front of a judge, and there's no court report or anything. So then you go to circuit court when you appeal it, and the cop will change his story. You don't have a transcript to impeach him with because your tape recorder doesn't count, and it's you start all over again.
Okay. I propose that we gather in the cave and brainstorm. And I also promise you that I'm going to ask Daryl to speak with the person doing the evidence lecture next week and ask them to do a little riff on how you guys can deal with this problem, because it's outrageous. And you're right, in that situation where you really, don't know anything about the case, I think you should be refusing to participate, refusing to go forward, maybe getting held in contempt, which is easy for me to say, but it's certainly an option to think about and explore. But at any rate, even if you don't get held in contempt and refuse to go forward, you can at every moment make your record that your client is receiving ineffective assistance of counsel. I would do an opening, Judge, but I have no idea what the hell the evidence is, so I don't think I'll be doing one today. Every part. But I'm gonna, because I have limited time and even more than that, limited attention span, because everybody's been working their ass off all day long, trying new stuff. I'm gonna ask you guys if we can table this conversation until later. You have my sympathies, and but in that situation, you're right. You don't want to put something out there that you have no idea if it's going to pan out or not. So, but let's talk about opening statements. You know, what else? I mean, what I've heard people say about what scares them about doing an opening statement is they may have this great fact or this great inconsistency between what the witness said back when and what they're saying at trial now. And the prosecutor doesn't really know about it yet. And they're afraid that if they talk about it in an opening statement or if they tell a part of the story in an opening statement, the prosecutor will coach their witnesses to change their testimony. Anybody worry about that kind of stuff? Okay. What else do you worry about? We're going to come back and talk about that. What?
Drawing objections.
Oh, okay. Drawing objections. Why? Because you're arguing?
Because I feel like it makes me look like I'm doing something wrong to the dumb jury.
No. But drawing an objection. But what is it that
from
you're...
the prosecutors. Well,
I
maybe,
know,
okay.
or even the judge.
Yeah.
I love it when the judge says, objection sustained.
Yes.
I sustained myself. That was a brilliant ruling. Great objection. But, I mean, is there something in particular that as you prepare to do the opening that you're afraid you're going to do that's improper that will legitimately draw that objection?
That I might argue in my opening.
Okay, and that's a fair
Or
thing
that
to
I
worry
might
about.
do it in the first person and get objected to because I'm trying something unique and I don't get to do it that way.
Oh, this is starting to sound like those forbidden, not in my jurisdiction words. I'm going to come back and talk about first person later on in this talk, so I hope I'll address that part for you. But drawing the objection, if you are, all you can do is make sure that you are writing and delivering an opening statement that is within the bounds of what the law tells us we can do. And arguing crosses that line. But, you know, that's not the reason why I think most really good trial lawyers will tell you not to do it. Most really good trial lawyers will tell you not to argue an opening statement because it's not effective. And the reason it's not effective is twofold. Anybody want to take a guess at what one of the two reasons is?
You don't have any credibility.
You don't have any credibility. In fact, you've got negative credibility, right? Because you're a criminal defense lawyer, right? Okay? But hopefully we've cleaned some of that up and we've started to develop some rapport during jury selection. But what's the other reason why arguing an opening, because we don't have their credibility, they don't want to believe us yet.
Is it because you sound defensive?
It could be in some circumstances that you sound defensive. Really, the biggest reason why you don't want to argue in closing, in opening statement, you do want to do it in closings, is because when you argue, you are not painting pictures. When Cynthia talked about the kids in the kitchen having breakfast with the sugar snaps, didn't you all have a picture in your head of what that looked like? When the jurors see what it is you're talking about through descriptive language, they will come to understand it and own it in a way that is much more powerful than anything you could do, even if they thought you were the second coming of Christ. Okay? Because it would belong to them. And it imprints in a different way on the mind. The thing about worrying about giving something away, and as a result of giving something away, putting the prosecutor in a position to take it back from you, to somehow take it away from you. That, I think, is a legitimate concern. And I think it's a legitimate concern, but I'd ask you to really ask yourself, by telling the jury that this guy said something different, I mean, you're not going to do it in this way, it'll be part of the story, but by letting the jury know that this witness said something very different on another occasion that really matters to your case, how can the prosecutor really take that away from you? Come on, stay with me now. I know you're tired, but stay with me now.
Well, I mean, if he says he didn't say that, and you don't have if you don't have a transcript.
Well, there you go. That's the thing that has to always be the factor, is how safe is this? How solid is this fact? Can I prove this fact even if they deny that it happened this way? If you have a transcript, or you have an investigator who took the statement, if you have photographs or a recording, or you have things like that, you know what? I welcome it. I'm serious. I've learned this, it took me a while as I was growing up as a trial lawyer, but I have learned to welcome it when they try to mess around with the witness's testimony. Because if I've got it locked in, then the question becomes in closing argument, what the hell was that all about? Why did it change? And you have all of these wonderful things that happen as you, in closing argument, you will be telling the story of the trial. That'll be one of the things you're talking about in closing argument. And you'll be talking about the pictures and the things the jurors said, heard from the witness on the stand, about the change in voice and demeanor and posture and all of that stuff. So that can be good. So the fear that you have about being afraid to give something away that might really hurt your client's case, test yourself on how solidly you have it. If you have it and it's proven and it's good, you're good to go. And don't forget, by the way, that they get redirect and they get rebuttal. So even if you think that you shouldn't give it up in opening, once you give it up during the trial itself, they still have a chance to try to take it back from you. So think about that. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. So we know that the opening statement is really, it's not to get up and, walk around and blah, blah, blah. It's our chance to communicate our theory of the case, that nutshell version that Andrea so wonderfully explained to us yesterday, through telling the story of innocence to the jury. And I'd like to deconstruct that statement a little bit for you, okay? We know that the theory is composed of the facts, the law, and the emotion, the dominant emotions of the case, right? And that it accommodates, steals, or neutralizes all of the facts beyond change, right? We're all good on that. And that gives us our little nutshell. But what is the story of innocence? So many of us as criminal defense lawyers, we are stuck in reactive mode. Everything we do is in response to what the prosecutor is doing in the case. And we're really, really beautiful, wonderful believers in that great constitutional idea of reasonable doubt, right? They got to prove it to you, ladies and gentlemen. And we come at the case ass backwards because of this idea of reasonable doubt. And so I put this picture up here hoping that you'll remember the picture, because reasonable doubt is both a sword and a shield. It is a powerful weapon in our arsenal. And we need to learn to wield the sword affirmatively, positively, by thinking positive things in a positive way in the case. And let me tell you what I mean by that in terms of taking the positive view. If your theory of the case in, okay, who's got Baker? In a nutshell, what's your theory of the defense? Did he do it or not?
Did he do it or not?
Yeah, did he commit the murder or not?
No.
Okay, that's a good answer. I should be throwing
Is that
you
a real
out.
question?
That was great, that was great. Well done. I'm kidding you a little bit, right? Okay. And when he talked to the police, did he confess or not?
No.
He did not confess. So your theory of the case is going to be that everybody's lying about what he said.
No,
Okay.
he didn't, well, I guess technically confessed, but he was threatened, so it's a false confession.
So in your theory of the case, in order for him to be innocent, right, that confession has to be false. Okay. What facts do you have to show that that is a false confession?
I would have to, he would probably have to testify, or maybe a cop might have been on cross that there was a process of going to the hospital instead, or maybe even the threat of him getting beat up as Otero had been in his past.
Okay, so he felt threatened, right? Because of Otero, right? Where can we get that fact from that we don't need necessarily our client for?
I mean, if Otero admits it, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, cross-examination,
But why
right?
would he admit that? You don't know.
He may not, okay? But you may be able to get that on cross-examination. How else do we know that the confession has to be false?
First of all, why are the police breaking protocol and putting Otero in the room with him?
Okay, there's that, yep. So things are a little fishy there, right? Anybody else? Well, yeah, we got the victim who said 3 white males 3 separate times as he was breathing his last, right? Okay, so right there, that's one good point to make. But what else about the confession do we have, the supposed confession?
Doesn't fit with the physical evidence?
Thank you very much. If he'd done it, he would have described it in a way that fits up with the physical evidence. And so when you think about this point, it's not they can't prove that it was accurate because, after all, there are these things that are different, right? We know he didn't do it. We know he lied to the police when he said he did it. And one of the ways we know that is because the stab wounds and what he said happened do not match up at all. Okay? You'll say that that's argument. What I just did is argument, right? Okay? All right. Now, those are good facts for us, right? Those facts become for us part of the story of innocence. But we don't just say them as facts. We want to prove this through our case. I don't mean in our case in chief. We want to prove this. I know we do not have the burden of proof. But when you are thinking about trying your cases, and you are thinking not just about your opening statement, but the whole thing from A to Z, I want you to think about the fact that you have a burden of proof, that you want to prove to the jury that you are right and they are wrong, and that you are going to mine their case for every single fact and inference and piece of physical evidence and common sense that you can to show that your version is right and theirs is wrong. That's what I mean when I say being positive about your case. I have heard people, try OUI cases, and they'll talk about how the woman's driving was fine, and when they get up in the opening statement or the closing argument, they'll talk about there was no indication that she swerved or sped or hit the curb. And what the fuck, right? What's the affirmative way to say that? There's no indication of that. What?
She was driving fine. She drove in control.
She drove between the lines at the speed limit. She put her brakes on in time to come to a stop at the stop sign, a full stop, a complete stop, before she slowly moved into the intersection and forward and on up the road. Now that paints a picture of good driving. And that's a whole hell of a lot different from, there's no indication that, she, what the fuck is that? Okay? So prove your case. And the good facts that you're getting are coming, a lot of it are coming from cross. And I think sometimes we forget that. Now the good facts, I would just do this little thing over here about the confession, right? About how the physical stuff doesn't match up. And I can list those facts out, and those are all points to support the argument that the confession is bullshit, right? It's false. He lied. What I need to do now is think about each one of the facts that we just listed out and think of them as scenes in a movie. Because there's a story for each one of those facts. Anybody have a cool idea about how to tell some of the story about the facts, about the wounds not matching up?
I would go to put up a list right from the medical report, the coroner's report, and then.
Well, it's not in evidence yet, but assuming you had somebody's permission to show it to the jury in advance, okay?
And then I would take the exact quote from the testimony from his confession, and I would match them up with each other,
And,
so that you see that they're different.
okay,
Tell it from the doctor's perspective of where these wounds are and how bloody they are.
oh, see, you just did something very, very cool, okay? She looped, you were like amazing, you like did 6 slides ahead here. She used point of view to switch the perspective of the story to the perspective of the careful, thoughtful medical examiner, if we want him to be right about his conclusions, right in his observations, as he measured and documented what the angle of the stab wounds and all of that stuff. And that would be part of the story that we would be telling about the stab wounds not matching up. You see what I mean about how the facts are they're not just this little flat thing that sits on top of your page in ink. It is a picture. It is made up of a bunch of actions and people and place and stuff like that. That make sense? Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as we're moving through this process of developing the thing, we have to decide at some point what are the crucial scenes. Because in opening statement, I think the thing that we can do sometimes is we find ourselves in need of a very good editor. And we wind up getting into detail, and it's more detail than helps move the story forward in its essence. It can be confusing to the jury, particularly if you use a lot of names of witnesses and that sort of thing. We'll talk about that in a second, how to clear some of that up. You okay, hon?
Yes, thank you.
And it can just be too much to absorb. I mean, in some ways, asking you to sit here at this point in the day and listen to me, or anyone else even I'll allow for, is asking a bit too much, right? So you want to make sure that you pick the crucial scenes that best move that theory, that story of innocence forward, okay? And you're going to allow yourself permission to let some of them go so that the jury will hear about them during the evidence in the case. Now, how do you make that decision? What do you think? Anybody have any thoughts about that? What do you let go?
Are you talking about deciding on what scenes to put into your opening?
Or to cut out? Yes, either way.
I think one thing I think is most important is what's going to interest the jury, to your side of the case.
Well, how the hell do I know
Huh?
what's going to interest them?
Well, I think that's what should be your baseline.
Right. What's going to make it more interesting? What else?
Find a powerful emotional scene.
Powerful emotional scenes. Yes. What else? What else will you take into consideration?
Piggyback on that, like you were talking about your client where he's going beat up to his mother, the human side of the client, to impress that upon the jury from the beginning.
Okay, yep. Something that's also going to serve to humanize our client and maybe by the end of the trial give our jurors the ability to say, maybe I wouldn't have acted that way myself, but I can sort of see how someone else might.
If you can spin it correctly, the bad facts that you can't get rid of.
Right? And where are those going to go? In the mediocre sandwich, right? Okay? If it's a fact that we're afraid we'll lose all credibility about by not talking about it in the opening, okay? The emotional center cases, one of the things I think about is what's the key moment in the case? What is that one moment in time that if it hadn't happened, my guy wouldn't be here today? And there usually is like one place on your timeline where you can figure that out. And that's something that you want to make the anchor of the story, I think, often. And you want to think about what scenes do you need to put before it and after it in order to make it understandable, so that the jury will understand it. And when you do that, you want to think about it, I think, in terms of the ability to build, as Cynthia told us, to make the story crescendo a little bit, to build to a point of where we're building these images and these scenes so that the jurors will see it and adopt it and understand how things happen. By the way, storytelling done right can be incredibly persuasive without ever crossing the line of argument. We'll talk about that in a bit. Now, having decided on the scenes that I'm going to let go because, you know, they help tell the story, but they're not crucial to the opening statement. They're not crucial to the simple and clear understanding of what this case is really all about, right? We want to think about including narrative detail. Now, let me ask all of you. When I say Michael Myers, or you see Michael Myers on the screen, what comes into your mind? What picture comes into your mind? Austin Powers?
Goalie man.
Who?
Halloween.
Halloween, right? Now,
Yeah. Halloween.
right? There's the spy who shagged me, right? And then there's this guy.
I forgot about
who I just don't want him in my trial. I'm sorry. I really do not want him showing up in my trial. When I talk about narrative detail, the thing is, I'm going to have to be like fair and honest with you all now and tell you that I actually heard a judge say this. And I probably heard lots of great lawyers say it before, but I was at a point in my career where when he said it, it struck me, it resonated with me, and I was ready to hear it and understand what the hell he was talking about. And what he said is that there is always a gap between the case that the lawyer thinks that they are trying to the jury and the case that the jury is actually hearing and seeing and understanding. And that the party, because he was a judge, the party who gets that right, narrows that gap the most, is the side that's going to win. And so what my point here is that if Michael Myers, or if I threw out red car to you and I had you all close your eyes and think about a red car, I guarantee you'd all have different cars. If the details of what that looks like matters, we have to make sure that everyone is on the same page about what it looks like, right? And we accomplish that through narrative detail. Narrative detail, the stuff like the sugar snaps in the morning at the breakfast table. The details that create pictures, the small details, where we take the time to describe the place, what it looked like and what it felt like. Where we engage the five senses. You know, what did it feel like when we touched it? What did it smell like? What did it sound like? What could they see? Now, you, sir, I can't see you, but you've got that really nice shirt on right there, right in the center.
Oh.
Are you just like dying because you're tired, or did that not make sense to you?
I'm dying because I'm tired.
Okay.
I apologize.
But no, you don't have to apologize. Please don't apologize to me. I feel the same way. I can lie down right here now if I get away with it. But let me ask all of you. I mean, does that make sense to you? That when you ground it in the senses, you know that you are talking about concrete stuff that the jurors can wrap their heads and hearts around. Okay. Now, you're not going to be able to hear this, and I don't want to keep you later, and I'm already keeping you now, so I'm going to skip that. But I'm just going to say, because the sound isn't working, I tested it out, Andrea. I swear to God, it was working. PowerPoint master. So I'll just tell you that if you ever have never seen the movie A Time to Kill, it's worth watching just for this closing argument, because he does this closing argument in which he does an immensely effective use of narrative detail. There's a phrase where he describes this little girl who's been beaten and raped as her lying there left for dead, soaked in their urine, soaked in their semen, soaked in her blood. I mean, what a powerful image, okay? And there's lots more in it. It's really worth it just for that. So we want to structure the story to make it understandable. So where do we start? I mean, what order do we do things in? And we've talked about this a little bit. I mean, when Andrea showed us yesterday morning, all those many moons ago, it feels like now, those scenes, those clips from Freeway, right? They were all out of order. And we had a really different reaction when we saw what came before, right? When we got that last piece of information that mattered. So the order in which you tell the story sort of set, you think, I don't know, if you want to be a technician about it, think about it as the foundation that you need to lay for the juror's acceptance of the next part of the story. What do they need to know first in order to accept the next part? Now, when you are talking about things like motivations and bias and motive to lie, that's a place where it's really sometimes challenging not to get into argument, right? Somebody has a bias to lie, a motive to lie, right? In the Dodd case, right?
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And that bias is based on the fact that they do not want to go to jail. Or as I like to think of it, and a couple of groups have heard me say this now, Judy's fucked and she knows it on the case, right? It sums up the whole thing, right? In a way, right? She's screwed on the case. So how do we tell the story of her bias? We tell the story of she's fucked and she knows it through how she gets caught with the money right in the room, to that moment when she's sitting in the cell. We think about where in the story we're going to talk about the fact that she's done time before, that this is not her first visit to a lockup or to a court situation. And that is how we get to say, we go and we describe that whole thing, and we stop before the point where we'd say, and that's why she's lying, folks. Or, you see what I mean? It speaks for itself. Okay. Primacy and recency, you already heard about that. And I'm going to skip talking about it anymore. Sometimes people struggle with how to begin. You know, I've become a fan of this thing of the key moment in the case, or a key moment in the case, and I'll describe it in present tense as visually as I can, and then end that thing, and then segue with something about, you know, my client, whatever my theory of the defense is, you know, he's here because of mistaken identification, or whatever the hell it is, only I wouldn't put it that way. And then do something where I'll say, in order to understand how all of this happened and how an innocent man finds himself here in this courtroom today, you need to go back in time. And in the murder case, it was go back in time, not to the night of the incident, not to, you know, the day before the incident, but 6 years before my client was even knew anybody in the case, because that was where the story started. So you can do that kind of thing. And what that does is it sets that hook at the beginning. It makes use of that primacy. It gets everybody interested in where the hell is this going and what's it all about. If you're struggling, this is a case about. But you know what? Practice it, saying it, this is a case about, and then stop yourself from saying this is a case about and just say what the case is about. Okay? Once upon a time. You're not going to say once upon a time, but in your head. Sometimes that can get you right into the, getting right into the description at the beginning. Using themes can be really powerful, starting your opening with a theme. In the example that Cynthia gave us, you know, like, you know, what is taking so long was her repetition theme that she used very masterfully to break up the different segments and time pieces that she was doing as she flashed further and further back in the story of her representation of Robert. So those kinds of things can be really useful. If you start that way, it can be lovely to find a way to finish your opening statement with that same theme line. Can be really wonderful. And by the way, I am like impaired. I cannot do the where's the beef of the case. Some people are really good at thinking about that slick one sentence that really has a lot of appeal and really sticks. So I go to my friends for help with that. But you know what? It doesn't have to be the where's the beef. It just has to be clear and powerful. A clean expression of what the case is really all about. Something that's easy to use and to repeat at different points. It doesn't have to be the $1 million advertising slogan. Chronology, okay? Cynthia talked in her story about chronology. Here's the danger. Chronology is a good way to tell a story most often because people will just understand it better that way, okay? But what the thing is that prosecutors have this little tiny frame and they put it right around the moments just before and after the event. And that's their chronology. And our story of innocence, as you know, when we do our timelines and we work the case out and we work the theory stuff the way Andrea said, our timelines, the story of innocence and the explanation for either the mistaken or the wrongful false accusation of our client gets found either before, in what happened before, or what happened afterwards. And so our timelines, by necessity, are much longer. So chronology, but remember it's the chronology about the story of innocence. One other thing, particularly with newer lawyers, we forget sometimes that the prosecutor has just gotten up and done an opening statement and told the story. So we don't have to tell that same story in the same way. We are now free to tell our story. So please keep that in mind. Okay. I'm a big believer in how I prepare is I will write it out. I walk around, I say it out loud, I find, you know, at 3 in the morning, whatever, my dog is like thinking I'm nuts. And some key phrase that I like a lot will come out, I'll write it down because that's a keeper, I want to make sure I keep it. And at some point, having written it out and thought about the structure and all of that, I'm then going to reduce it to an outline. The reason I reduce it to an outline is because then I cannot read it. And I'm not talking about preparation that allows you to deliver a memorized thing. When you deliver from memorization, your eye is constantly traveling back up into the back of your head where you're picturing the page where the next words are written. You want to memorize the structure, so you reduce it to an outline, 1 page, structure of the scenes that you're going to develop. And if you have been to all of the important scenes, like the interrogation room, you've seen all the physical evidence, and you've gone to the scene where every important thing happened in the case, you will then be able to describe the events from the picture in your mind about how it all happened. And then you're in the moment and you're able to deliver without, in a way that's very extemporaneous. I didn't say unprepared, but extemporaneous and good. How's that? It's good. Do that. So, but what I do, because I'm a nervous Nelly, and I told you about primacy and recency, is I will think about that opening paragraph or opening first couple of sentences. And I will memorize that. And I will practice my delivery on that and make sure I'm really solid with it. I also do the same thing with the end of the opening statement so that I know I'm going to end strong. Okay? Because I want to be just like, what's her name here? With her broken ankle, sticking the landing at the end of the opening. Okay? Which brings me to another important thing. If you get up tomorrow and you are like walking out of the chair and you start talking your opening statement, somebody's going to smack you. Okay? When you stand up to deliver the opening statement, you should stand in silence and allow everyone to get comfortable and ready to listen to you. That silence is like a camera lens going from wide angle to a close-up of you. It shows respect for your jurors, and the thing is that it is also a point for you to do some good breathing, so that when you speak those first words, you're speaking into silence. When we get up and talk in front of a group, no matter, well, even the most gifted of us will sometimes lapse into, I am now speaker man. I am speaking in front of a group of people, and we become someone else. And we speak too loud, and all of that other stuff, right? If you let that moment of silence develop, before you speak those first words, you can't yell. It's just so much more effective. So do that. And when you finish your closing argument, I mean, whatever the hell we're talking about here, when you're done, it's the same deal. Stand there, okay? And do not move until you've made connection with each person on the jury. Point of view. We saw some of that in Cynthia's presentation, third-person narrator. First person, the object, right? In my case, the car that my client was driving was a really important thing in the case. It would have been really cool to talk from the perspective of the car in that case. It would have been a very cool story to tell. And so when you're brainstorming your openings and you're brainstorming just the case in general, think about, you know, if there's an object or a place, a point of view on the events. Think about literally putting yourselves in the, quote, shoes or in the place of that object and thinking through the story from that point of view. But I'm running short on time. I really encourage all of you to experiment with first person. And I think it's totally cool if you do first person tomorrow in your rooms, because it is an enormously valuable experience for you. Learning about what the case is really all about. When you start to do that, you start to really get it. I am going to say that in real life, back in my jurisdiction and a lot of your jurisdictions, it has nothing to do with whether or not a judge is going to come down on me. My concern about first person in an opening, as opposed to a closing, is that if my personality and my phrasing does not sync up and match really well with the witness they're actually going to hear from on the stand, there's a disconnect that can cost me my credibility. So I'm cautious about it in opening statement. The other thing about first person that can happen sometimes is that it may get you into drawing into internal thoughts and feelings, which are more argument if they're not going to be testified to. So just lay that out there for you. But that is not in any way a recommendation that you not play with that tomorrow if that's what you would like to do.
When you mean first person, you mean you're speaking to yourself, or
Yeah,
first person of
right.
not your client?
You could be your client, you could be the car. You could be, in my case, I could be the car. You know, I first met Juan when he came into the dealership, blah, 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 blah. He loved me. He took such good care of me. I was his pride and joy, you know, that kind of thing. All right, I am almost done. This should really resonate with all of you, right? I'm hungry. God, this is a lot more fun when I'm stoned. Right? This one in the front, you know, please make it stop.
Yeah.
True story. Somebody I know was on cross, and they took a short recess, and the juror passed a note to the judge saying, please make it stop. That whole thing about narrative detail that moves things forward is a good thing to keep in mind, okay? But every single one of you left the room while I was talking, and I'm going to give all of you the benefit of the doubt and assume that everybody was trying to pay attention, if not for no other reason that you're nice people and you're trying to be courteous, right? But let's face it, we all left the room. I probably left the room. So the thing is, we have to paint the pictures, and we have to tell the story in a way that makes it easy for everyone to stay with us. When we stand up in front of a room, whether it's here or in front of a jury or anywhere else, we assume the burden, the obligation of doing our level best to communicate clearly and effectively so that people can understand us with as little effort on their part as possible. And that's what pictures allow you to do. So have mercy, because we are practicing jury-centered trial advocacy here. We are client-centered. That's who we are. But when we step into the courtroom, the people who decide what happens are the jurors. And everything that we do has to, in our verbal and nonverbal behavior, has to communicate that to them. That they are the most important people in that room to us. That if they simply are able to stay with us and listen to the whole thing, as you were all hanging on, trying to do, they'll do the right thing. So, blah, blah, blah. And this brings me to the last point I'm going to make, and then I really am going to stop, even though I have a couple more things. When we get into Speaker Man, lots of times it's coming from a place of fear. And you've heard the phrase eye contact a bunch of times by now, right? And I'm going to say that eye contact for me doesn't quite get it right. Because I was able to do eye contact and it didn't mean anything until I was able to finally move to the idea of eye connection. Eye connection involves not simply checking in and meeting somebody's eyes and moving on. Jody English, who's fabulous, calls it stove topping, like you just bounce back and forth. But you're not really being present in the moment with that person. Right now, I'm looking at you, and while I'm talking with you, I am interested in, what's going on in your mind and your reaction to me. And I'm looking for the communication you're giving me. Okay? And you have to give yourselves permission to do that. That's real communication. It's not hard to do, but it's hard to give yourself permission to do it. And so tomorrow, when you're working on your opening statement, and you are in connection, eye connection with your listeners, it will tell you, like when you're putting someone in a coma, it will tell you when they don't understand something that you've said, or they disagree, or that you're being too loud. It will keep you in the moment with your audience in true communication. They have so much to say to you, if only you will look and listen with your eyes. I really thank you so much for your tolerance this afternoon. I want to say to you that from the moment the prosecutor sits down from their opening statement, that is their best moment in the case. After that, everything goes downhill because they lose control. They have to put witnesses up who will carry the ball for them. Opening statement for us is a way to wedge in there and get the jury thinking about the case from a different point of view. Our goal is, great, it's to win an opening statement. I'm not so sure I totally accept that you win an opening statement. My goal is to get their conditional acceptance, that if everything I have told them turns out to be borne out and proven in the evidence, that they will acquit my client. That's my goal. And the last thought I leave you with is that when we talk about facts beyond change and how vitally important they are in the way we think about our cases, there is one fact beyond change that has immeasurable power. And that is each and every one of you. You are a fact beyond change for the prosecution. Your belief in your client, in your story, in the work that you're doing, is a fact beyond change. And it is powerful beyond measure. We all have won cases that we should have lost on paper. We've all lost cases that we should have won. But I am convinced in some of the cases where I won, when on paper I should have lost, It was because the jury couldn't say no to me. And not because I'm all that. That's not what I mean. I mean the commitment and the integrity of in the way I tried the case, of being right about every single thing I said to them. The concern and humanity that I showed my client becomes a fact beyond change in the jury. So my request of each and every one of you is to embrace that about yourselves. Embrace it here, stretch the boundaries, and embrace it and use it when you go home. Because you're a very, very special group of people. And it's been my honor to talk with you today.